Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. This time we're looking at how mistakes can actually HELP us learn English.
Exactly. Mistakes are really just feedback in disguise. We've got a really interesting set of sources all about how we can use these mistakes to get better.
Really interesting stuff. So, what are some of the most common mistakes English learners make? I'm sure we've all been there.
Well, grammar is a big one. Lots of learners mix up verb tenses, like maybe they'll use past simple when it should be present perfect.
Oh yeah, like saying I went to the store yesterday when they really mean I've been to the store many times.
Right. And articles are another tricky area. You know those little words a, and, the. They can be a real headache for learners.
Yeah, for sure. What about pronunciation? I bet that can be tough too, especially with sounds that aren't in someone's native language.
Absolutely. Like the th sound. It can be a real challenge for people whose first language doesn't have that sound. And then there's vocabulary, of course. It's easy to pick words that are almost right but don't quite fit.
Like saying I am boring instead of I am bored. It means something totally different. It's interesting how these slip-ups happen. Why do we make those kinds of mistakes?
Well, sometimes it's just nerves, like speaking in a new language can trigger that fight or flight response, especially in front of native speakers. And then all those rules you've learned just seem to vanish.
Right. It's kind of like stage fright. When you know the lines, but the pressure makes you forget everything.
Exactly. And our sources also talk about direct translation. Sometimes our brains try to force fit the rules of our first language onto English.
Ah, so that's why someone might say car red instead of red car.
Exactly. It's like their brains playing language Tetris, trying to fit the pieces together in a way that just doesn't work in English. And English has so many of its own quirks too, like irregular verbs, idiomatic expressions.
Wait, hold on. Can you explain what an idiomatic expression is for anyone listening who might not know?
Oh, yeah, sure. An idiomatic expression is a phrase that doesn't actually mean what the individual words mean. For example, kick the bucket.
Ah, right. So it doesn't actually mean kicking a bucket. It means something else entirely.
Exactly, it means to die. Idioms can be really hard to grasp, especially if you're trying to translate them directly.
No kidding. English can be so strange sometimes. It's amazing anyone learns it at all.
Right. But language learning is complex. It's not just about memorizing rules. It's about actually using them. So mistakes, they're just part of the process.
So all our sources seem to agree. Mistakes are valuable. But how do we actually use them to get better?
One of our sources told this really cool story about a student named Maria, super bright, but terrified of making mistakes. And once she started seeing those mistakes as opportunities, her confidence just shot up.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience when I was learning French.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was so scared to speak, but then I had this thing happen in Paris. I tried to order a croissant, but ended up with a plate of plain bread.
Oh, no.
So embarrassing. But it taught me to just go for it,
Yeah.
not to let fear hold me back.
That's a perfect example of how even a little mistake can be a turning point.
That's really inspiring. But it doesn't tell us how to actually use those mistakes. Do any of our sources offer any specific advice?
They do. Consistent practice is key. The more you practice, the more mistakes you make, and the more you learn from them. It's all about adjusting and refining your skills.
Practice makes progress, as they say. What other advice do they have?
Well, they recommend recording yourself speaking. I know, it can be a bit awkward, but it's super helpful. You'll notice things you wouldn't otherwise catch.
Yeah, it's like watching yourself dance on video. Sometimes you're surprised at what you see. So recording can help, but what about when you're talking with someone?
That's where embracing corrections comes in. When someone corrects you, see it as a gift, not a criticism.
That's a great point. Instead of getting defensive, we should be grateful for the chance to learn.
Exactly. Write down the corrections, look for patterns, and use that feedback. It's like having a personalized roadmap to fluency.
And remember, it's about progress, not perfection. Celebrate those small wins, like holding a conversation in English without switching back to your native language.
Definitely. And to make practice fun, try some role playing. Like imagine you're ordering coffee, asking for directions, or having a job interview, all in English.
That's a great idea. And if you're by yourself, you could just describe your day out loud in English. Or even talk to yourself in the mirror. It works.
It does. Another fun activity, the spot the mistake game. Write down some sentences with mistakes in them and then try to find them.
Ooh, fun. Any examples?
We do. And I think this would be a good spot to take a break and let everyone test their skills. Okay, first one. She go to school every day. What's the mistake?
I think it should be she goes to school every day. That's Oz for the third person singular.
You got it. Small difference, but important grammatically.
Oh.
Okay, how about this one? I am not understand this question.
Ooh, this one sounds off. I think it should be, I do not understand this question, or I don't understand this question.
Yeah.
You can't have both am and not together.
Right again. People often combine those auxiliary verbs by mistake. Last one. They doesn't like pizza.
This is tricky. It should be, they don't like pizza.
Ugh.
Is only for he, she, or it.
You're a pro at this.
That was fun. I could definitely see how that game can help with grammar.
For sure. So let's talk about patience for a second. Learning a new language, it can be frustrating, especially when progress feels slow. How can we stay motivated?
Oh, yeah, I've been there. It's like hitting a wall, putting in the work but not really seeing the results.
Right. One of our sources compares it to like building a house. You can't rush the foundation, you know. You lay it brick by brick.
I love that visual. So in the beginning, we're laying the foundation, learning those basics.
Right. It might feel slow, but all those little bricks add up.
But sometimes it feels like you're building a house without any plans. How do we even know we're laying those bricks in the right way?
It's all about setting the right expectations, you know. Focus on small goals.
So instead of become fluent, it's more like learn 50 new words this month or something like that.
Yeah. Those little wins that keep you going.
Small wins, big difference. It's easy to get discouraged when you only focus on what you don't know. Any tips for being more patient with ourselves?
Think about this. Look back on your journey. What did you know when you started learning English? Compare that to what you know now.
That's so true. Sometimes we need that reminder of how much we've already learned.
Absolutely. And celebrate those little wins, like when you order food at a restaurant in English or have a whole conversation without switching back to your native language. Those are huge.
They really are. Speaking of support, do any of our sources talk about finding a language partner?
Oh, yeah, they do. It's super helpful. Someone to practice with, share your struggles, celebrate successes with.
Like a workout buddy for language learning. Makes it more fun and keeps you going. But what if you don't have someone to practice with?
Well, you can always find someone online. Lots of websites and apps connect you with people all over the world who are also learning English. Oh, that's a great idea. You can make friends and practice your English at the same time. What if you can't find a partner online either?
You can still practice by yourself.
By yourself?
Yeah.
Really? How does that even work?
Just describe your day in English or narrate what you're doing. Like if you're cooking, say all the steps out loud.
So it's all about finding little ways to integrate English into your life, even when you're alone.
Exactly. And all those small things, they really do add up over time.
So what's a big takeaway for our listener?
Well, it's that mistakes aren't bad. They're actually helpful.
They're just feedback.
Right. And it's really important to celebrate all those small wins. Whether you mastered a new grammar rule or had a quick chat in English, learned a few words, every little bit counts.
And don't forget to look back at how far you've come.
Exactly. It's amazing how much progress we can make without even realizing it. Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with one last thought. What if we, flip the script? Instead of trying to avoid mistakes, what if we tried to make new ones? Whoa, okay. I like where you're going with this. So instead of playing it safe, we should be trying new things, pushing ourselves even if it means messing up.
Exactly. It's about changing how we think about mistakes. They're not failures. They're chances to explore and learn new things.
I see what you mean. So instead of always using simple sentences, maybe we try using more complex ones, even if we're not sure they're totally correct.
Yeah, and then you can use the feedback to improve. It's all about taking those risks and seeing what happens.
Like we're turning those mistakes into little adventures.
I love that. So to everyone listening, remember, mistakes, they're not your enemy. They're how you get better.
Embrace the mess-ups, keep practicing, and celebrate every step you take, even the small ones. You got this.
And if you're ever feeling discouraged, just think back to when you first started learning English. You've come a long way.
That's such a good point. Sometimes we need that reminder, It's easy to forget how much progress we've made. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep into kindness and empathy.
Ooh, sounds intriguing.
It is, and we're doing it with kind of a meta twist.
Meta twist. I like where this is going.
So our source material is actually a podcast episode itself.
Oh, cool. From it.
It's from the English Globe, which is a show that helps people learn English.
Right. I've heard of it.
But don't worry, you don't need to brush up on your grammar for this deep dive.
Good to know.
We're going way beyond just language lessons here.
Okay, I'm all ears.
We're going to uncover universal truths about human connection.
No, that's what I'm talking about. Human connection is everything.
Absolutely. And the cool thing is, the English Globe episode uses personal stories to get this across.
Ah, stories. The best way to learn, right?
Exactly. Stories make these kind of complex emotions like empathy much more relatable.
It's like you're stepping into someone else's shoes, feeling what they feel.
Right on. And from the very beginning, you hear how powerful simple acts of kindness can be.
It's true. Sometimes just a small gesture can completely change someone's day.
Totally. They make a clear distinction between kindness and empathy, though.
Okay, yeah, there is a difference, isn't there?
Yeah, so kindness is all about doing good, taking action.
Right, like holding the door open for someone or helping a friend in need.
While empathy is more about understanding how someone else feels.
Interesting distinction. So empathy is like putting yourself in their place.
Exactly. And they don't stop there. They even bring up this idea of compassion.
Oh, compassion. That's a powerful one.
It really is. And they explain how it takes kindness a step further.
So it's not just about feeling empathy, it's about...
It's about being so moved by that understanding that you actually do something to help.
Wow. Yeah, that makes total sense. It's like empathy is the spark and compassion is what drives you to action.
Right. It's what motivates you to make a difference in someone's life.
I like that. Empathy is the spark.
But I also found it interesting how they brought in words like understanding and caring.
Those are good ones too.
Yeah.
You know, I think those are essential parts of true kindness.
I think so too. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. You can't have genuine kindness without understanding and caring. They're like the foundation.
Yeah, it's like the roots, right?
Exactly. Without them, kindness just becomes, I don't know, an empty gesture.
It loses its meaning.
Exactly. It's like going through the motions but not really feeling it.
And this is where things got really interesting for me.
Ooh, tell me more.
The podcast actually brings up a scientific study.
A scientific study about kindness.
Yeah. It shows that being kind makes us happier and less stressed.
Wait, so you're telling me being nice is good for my well-being too?
That's what the research says. It's like a hidden benefit of kindness.
Sign me up. I could definitely use less stress.
It's true. There's actually a ton of research on this whole helper's high thing.
Helper's high. I like the sound of that.
Basically, when we do something altruistic, our brains release endorphins.
So it's like we get a natural mood boost from being kind?
Exactly. It's like giving a gift and receiving one in return.
Okay, I am definitely on board with this whole kindness thing.
Now, they also share this really powerful story about empathy in action.
Oh, I love a good story. Hit me with it.
Okay, so imagine someone's feeling totally overwhelmed at work, right?
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
And then their coworker just says, "I've been in your shoes."
Wow. Simple but powerful.
Right. That's all it takes, just acknowledging their struggle.
It's like saying, I see you, I get it, you're not alone.
Exactly. And it makes all the difference.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the best thing we could do is just listen.
Sometimes we try so hard to fix things, but all someone really needs is to be heard.
Exactly. Just that validation can be incredibly comforting.
But it's also important how we express empathy, right?
Yeah, you can't just say the words, you gotta mean it.
Totally. And the podcast emphasizes that it's not just about the words.
You have the whole package, right? Tone of voice, body language, the whole shebang.
Exactly. They talk about speaking in a soft, genuine tone.
Yeah, like you actually care about what the other person is saying.
Exactly. It's about conveying care and concern.
And what about body language? That plays a role too, right?
Huge role. And what's fascinating is how nonverbal communication can go beyond language.
It's true. Sometimes a smile or a hug can speak volumes no matter what language you speak.
Exactly. Like a smile, eye contact, a gentle touch.
It's like a universal language of kindness.
And they can create connection and build trust regardless of the words.
So it's like, even if you're struggling to find the perfect words in English or any language,
you can still communicate kindness through your actions and demeanor.
Powerful stuff. It's all about creating a safe and welcoming space.
Totally. Now, the English Globe podcast actually suggests some activities.
Activities like what?
To help people practice kindness and empathy, specifically in English.
Interesting. So what kind of activities are we talking about here?
Well, they suggest practicing kind phrases out loud.
Like rehearsing for kindness. I like it.
And planning an act of kindness.
Like a kindness challenge.
Yeah, and even role-playing different scenarios.
Role-playing, huh? That sounds interesting. Like acting out different ways to show empathy.
Exactly. I mean, even if you're not learning English, these could be helpful for anyone, right?
Totally. Like Role-playing a difficult conversation could help anyone practice empathy.
It's like a safe space to practice those skills.
It's true. And by practicing kindness and empathy, even in our minds, we become more aware.
More aware of those opportunities to connect in real life.
It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
And I like how the podcast gives concrete examples of how to do this in different places.
Yeah, like where?
Like at school, at work, and just in everyday life.
Those real-world examples can be super helpful.
They really ground it in reality.
So let's dive into those examples. What did they say about kindness at school?
Well, one example was a teacher who noticed a student struggling.
Yeah, that can be tough, especially when you're young and feel lost.
And instead of ignoring it, the teacher offered extra help.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Just that little bit of extra effort can mean so much.
It really can, especially coming from a teacher, someone you look up to.
So true. It shows they care, that they want you to succeed.
Now, what about at work? They actually suggest checking in on a stressed colleague.
That's such a good one. We all get stressed sometimes.
And even if you can't actually SLV their problem, just listening can be enough.
Right. Sometimes people just need to vent, to get it off their chest.
Just knowing someone cares makes a difference.
It's a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles.
And of course, there's kindness in public spaces, like giving up your seat on a crowded bus.
A classic act of kindness. Simple, yet so considerate.
It shows you're willing to put someone else's needs before your own comfort.
It's a small gesture that can make a big impact on someone's day.
And this brings us to that cool meta twist I mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah, the meta twist. Remind me what that was again?
So the podcast itself, The English Globe, encourages listeners to share their stories.
Interesting. So they're encouraging connection and community through storytelling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we're doing in this deep dive, too.
Whoa, that's pretty meta. It's like a podcast about connection, inspiring connection in its listeners, which then inspires us to talk about it.
Full circle. It highlights how powerful podcasts can be for building empathy.
It's true. By listening to other people's stories, we gain a wider perspective.
We learn to see the world through different eyes.
And that's a crucial step in cultivating empathy and understanding.
I love it. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this, too.
Yeah. What are some ways you've experienced or witnessed kindness and empathy?
What stands out to you from what we've talked about so far?
Share your thoughts with us. We'd love to hear them. It's fascinating how just listening to someone's story can help us understand them better.
Right. It's like a bridge between different worlds.
Speaking of different worlds, during the break we got a question.
Oh, yeah. What about?
Someone was asking about how to be kind, specifically in English.
That's a great question. How do you express kindness when you're still learning a new language?
Well, the English Globe makes a good point. It's not just about the words themselves.
Right. It's about more than that.
It's about tone of voice, body language, showing you genuinely care.
Yeah, words can only go so far without the right feeling behind them.
Exactly. They even suggest practicing kind phrases out loud to get comfy with them.
Oh, that's smart. Almost like rehearsing for kindness.
But what if you're not totally fluent yet?
Yeah.
What if you're still nervous about the language?
Good point. Words can fail us sometimes.
That's where nonverbal cues come in big time. Like the podcast said, tone of voice is huge GE.
Yeah, sometimes how you say something matters even more than the words themselves.
A soft, calm voice can be so comforting, no matter what language you're speaking.
It creates that sense of safety, like you're really listening.
Exactly. So even if you mess up a word or two, the tone can still communicate kindness.
We got another question, too, about specific words to use for empathy in English.
Oh yeah, that's a common one. Like, are there magic phrases that guarantee you sound empathetic?
Right. Are there go-to words that just work across the board?
The English Globe gives some solid examples. Things like, I understand how you feel.
That's a good one. Straightforward and to the point.
Or, that must be really hard acknowledging their struggle.
Yeah, and another one was, I can imagine how tough that must be for you.
All about validating their experience, letting them know you're trying to see things from their side.
Without minimizing their feelings, which can be so easy to do accidentally.
And they emphasize you don't always need to offer advice or a solution.
Sometimes just listening is the most empathetic thing you can do.
Harder than it sounds though, right? We always want to jump in and fix things.
It's like we think we need to have the answer, but sometimes just being there, the answer.
The podcast also suggests using encouraging words, like celebrating someone's successes.
Oh, I like that. Not just focusing on when people are down, but also being there for their wins.
Yeah, showing you're happy for them, that you support them.
Yeah. And of course, offering help when someone's struggling, but in a way that feels genuine.
Right, not like you're just doing it out of obligation, but because you actually care.
So it's like being proactive with kindness, not just reactive.
And let's not forget those small acts of kindness that can turn a whole day around.
Oh, like what?
Like if someone drops something, helping them pick it up.
Or holding a door open, smiling at a stranger, those little things.
They might seem small, but they can create a ripple effect of positivity.
It's like that saying, kindness is contagious.
It really is. When we see someone being kind, it inspires us to do the same.
Creates a more compassionate community just through those small actions.
And speaking of compassionate communities, before we wrap up, a little food for thought.
Ooh, I like where this is going. Hit me with it.
So the English Globe was all about using English for kindness, right?
Right.
But it got me thinking, could learning any new language be an act of empathy in itself?
Whoa, that's deep. I never thought of it that way before.
But it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, when you learn a new language, you're opening yourself up to a whole new culture.
New ways of thinking, new perspectives.
You're basically saying, I want to understand you better. And that's empathy in action.
It's bridging that gap between different worlds.
Exactly. So that's our final thought for you today.
Could learning a new language be a form of empathy? What do you think?
That's a really interesting question to think about, isn't it?
It is. Learning a new language as a form of empathy.
Like you're not just learning words, you're learning about a whole culture.
Their values, their traditions, how they see the world.
It's a way of saying, I see you, I want to understand you.
And that's really at the heart of empathy, isn't it?
Totally. It's about connecting with people on a deeper level.
And before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on those micro kindnesses again.
Oh, yeah. Those little things we can do every day.
Like holding the door, offering a compliment, just being present.
Exactly. They might seem small, but they make a difference.
It's like that butterfly effect, right?
Yeah.
One small act can have a ripple effect.
Creating a wave of positivity.
So as we finish this deep dive, remember those micro kindnesses.
Look for opportunities to practice them every single day.
Because it all adds up, you know.
It creates a more kind and compassionate world.
And who knows, maybe your act of kindness will inspire someone else.
And that's how we create real change.
One small act at a time.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into kindness and empathy.
We hope you learned something new and feel inspired to spread a little more kindness.
Because the world could always use a little more of that.
Absolutely. Until next time, be kind to yourselves and to each other.
Take care, everyone. Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And this time we're going to be taking a really fascinating look at Elon Musk. You guys sent in a ton of great material, and I think we're going to have a really good time with this one.
Yeah, I think so too. And, you know, it's really interesting because there's so much out there about him, you know, but a lot of it's just headlines and tweets and stuff. This is a chance to kind of dig deeper and see, you know, the real story behind the man.
I'm with you there. And I think one of the best places to start is with his origins, you know, where he came from, how his early life shaped who he is today.
Exactly. So let's head back to Pretoria, South Africa. That's where it all began back in 1971. His father was an engineer and his mother was a model and dietitian.
Wow. So already we see those two kind of contrasting influences, you know, engineering and the world of modeling. I wonder if that had an impact on his personality or his drive.
Definitely possible. I mean,
Yeah.
being exposed to those different perspectives from a young age, you know, it might have given him a unique way of looking at the world. Maybe it helped him develop that ability to think outside the box.
Yeah, that makes sense. But, okay, not every kid with an engineer for a dad grows up to be Elon Musk. What else was going on in those early years?
Well, one thing that really stands out is that he taught himself computer programming. And we're not talking about just messing around with basic code here.
Yeah.
He actually created and sold a video game when he was just 12 years old.
Wait a minute, you're telling me he was selling video games at 12? That's insane. I mean, that takes some serious initiative, not to mention the technical skills to actually create a game from scratch.
Absolutely. I mean, even at that young age, you could see that he wasn't just interested in technology. He was already thinking about business and how to turn his ideas into something real.
So we're already seeing that entrepreneurial spirit early on, and that definitely continues as he gets older. He moves to Canada at 17, first to Queen's University, and then he transfers to the University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And his choice of majors is super interesting, too. Physics and economics. Almost as if he was intentionally building this foundation, you know, for tackling huge problems.
It's like he wanted to understand how the universe works and then figure out how to apply that knowledge to real-world challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
But then there's that whole Stanford thing. He gets accepted into their PhD program, one of the best in the world, and drops out after 2 days to start a business. I mean, was that a stroke of genius or just crazy?
Well, I think it shows his unwavering belief in his own vision. Like he had this gut feeling that he could make a bigger impact outside of academia. And, given his track record, maybe he was right.
And so he jumps headfirst into the tech world of the mid-90s. He co-founds this company called Zip2 with his brother Kimball.
Zip2 was like an online business directory with maps, years before Google Maps.
Yeah.
Talk about being ahead of the curve.
He seems to have this knack for identifying those emerging markets, seeing the potential before anyone else.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. And that gamble paid off big time. They ended up selling Zip2 for $37 million just 4 years later.
So most people would be set for life at that point, especially in their 20s. But not Elon. He takes those millions and plows them straight into another venture, X.com.
Which, as we all know, would eventually become PayPal. It revolutionized online payments, and I think it really cemented his reputation as a true innovator, not just a one-hit wonder.
It's like he had this drive to keep pushing the boundaries, to take on bigger and bigger challenges.
And those early successes, they were just the beginning. Because the really game-changing chapters of his story, they're still to come.
Yeah.
And so that brings us to Tesla. I mean, I think this is probably the company that most people associate with him, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's become synonymous with electric cars, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy is that back when he started Tesla in 2003 electric cars, they weren't exactly cool.
Yeah, they were seen as kind of like practical, I guess, but not very exciting. Definitely not the kind of car you'd see like a celebrity driving.
Right, exactly. They were for people who were really eco-conscious. But Musk, he saw it differently. He saw the potential for electric cars to be just as cool and desirable as any gas-powered car.
And he really proved that with the Roadster, Tesla's first production car. I mean, it was fast, stylish, and it had a range of over 200 miles.
Yeah, the Roadster, it was a statement. It was like he was saying, look, electric cars can be awesome.
And it really forced the rest of the auto industry to pay attention.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then they came out with the Model S, a luxury sedan that blew everyone away.
Yeah, and the Model X with those crazy falcon wing doors. I mean, come on. It was like something out of a movie.
But, even with all those advancements, people were still worried about range. Like, what happens if you run out of charge in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, that was a big concern back then, range anxiety.
Yeah. So Tesla, they tackled that problem head on. They built out this massive network of supercharger stations all across the country.
It was genius. Suddenly you could drive a Tesla pretty much anywhere without having to worry about getting stranded.
And it was more than just the cars themselves. Tesla also started getting into solar panels, home battery systems like the Powerwall, even solar roof tiles.
So they were becoming like a full-blown energy company.
Right. It was all about creating this sustainable ecosystem.
Okay, so we've got all this going on with Tesla, but at the same time, he's also launching rockets into space with SpaceX, which he founded in 2002.
SpaceX, I mean, that's another whole level of ambition, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, talk about aiming high.
Yeah.
Literally.
He said that his goal is to make humans a multiplanetary species.
Which is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. And a huge part of that is making space travel more affordable, which is what SpaceX is all about.
Exactly. And they did that by developing reusable rockets, like the Falcon 9 and the Falcon Heavy.
Yeah. These rockets, they can land back on Earth after launching a payload into space.
Which is revolutionary. I mean, before SpaceX, rockets were basically single use. Use it once and then it's gone. So expensive. But with the reusable rockets, it brings the cost down dramatically.
It's like the difference between taking a taxi and riding the bus. Way more people can afford to ride the bus.
Yeah, great analogy. And then there's Starship, their next generation spacecraft.
Yeah.
Designed to take people to Mars and beyond.
I mean, haven't they had some pretty crazy explosions during testing?
Yeah, they have. But for Musk, that's just part of the process. He's not afraid to fail. In fact, he kind of embraces it. They learn from those mistakes and they keep iterating.
So it's all about constant improvement.
Yeah. Push the limits, see what works, see what doesn't, and then try again. And while SpaceX is focused on getting us to Mars, their Starlink project is all about connecting people here on Earth.
Right. Starlink. That's the network of satellites that provides global internet coverage.
Even to the most remote parts of the world.
So we've got Tesla revolutionizing transportation and energy. SpaceX pushing the boundaries of space travel and connecting the entire planet. And we're not even done yet. It's like he's got his fingers in every pie. Solar City, Neuralink, The Boring Company, it's mind-blowing.
It really is. He's taking on so many different challenges. Like with Solar City, which is part of Tesla now, right? It's all about making solar energy more accessible.
And then you've got Neuralink, which honestly sounds like something out of science fiction. They're developing brain-computer interfaces.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. These tiny little devices that you implant in your brain.
Yeah.
And they could potentially revolutionize the way we interact with technology, even treat neurological disorders.
But that also raises some pretty serious ethical questions, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we make sure this technology is used responsibly? How do we prevent it from being misused?
It's a lot to think about. And then on top of all that, you've got the Boring Company, which is basically digging tunnels underground to create high-speed transportation systems.
Yeah. Traffic is a nightmare in so many cities.
Yeah.
And Musk's solution is, well, pretty unique. I mean, instead of trying to improve existing roads, he's just like, let's go underground.
That's classic Musk, though, right? Thinking outside the box, not afraid to try something completely different.
Yeah. It's both impressive and kind of scary sometimes. And, that level of ambition, it doesn't come without his critics.
Right. He's definitely had his fair share of controversy over the years.
Yeah. I mean, he's been accused of pushing his employees too hard, and his tweets, sometimes they land him in hot water.
It's a reminder that even someone as brilliant as Elon Musk is still human.
Exactly. He makes mistakes. He's not perfect. But despite all the criticism, you can't deny that his story is pretty inspiring.
Oh, for sure. He took huge risks, faced tons of setbacks, and yet he's achieved things that most people thought were impossible.
Yeah. He dreamed big, and he worked his butt off to make those dreams a reality. And that's something we can all learn from.
I think that's a great takeaway from this deep dive. It's not just about the technology, it's about the power of vision, determination, hard work.
Absolutely. And, as we move further into this future filled with AI and space travel and all this incredible tech, it's more important than ever to really think about the ethical implications.
Yeah, how do we use these tools for good? How do we create a better world?
Exactly. And ultimately, those are questions that each of us has to answer for ourselves. So thank you for joining us on this journey. I hope you found it as fascinating as we did.